All right, we are back. I've got a free week of StreamYard services on my account, so uh, that ends on October 1st. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and take full advantage of my free week to give you a proper live stream using my new brand design, as you can see in the upper corner and in the top right corner here. Uh, so yeah, we've got quite a lot to talk about this evening, and it's going to be pretty wild. Uh, but I wanted to give you an update on what's been going on because there are some things that have been happening over the last month or so that I've not really been at liberty to talk about. But I'm just going to go ahead and do it because why not? You may have noticed that the ATP network and A&M podcasts have not been broadcasting, and that is because the guy behind ATP network and A&M network, Andre Morton, well, it turns out he's a massive thief and liar. Tired peasant who recently moved from Florida to Ohio with her kids to be with her partner and start a new life in a state that's a lot less expensive to live in. Put on a fundraiser to try and raise money through a spot fund. I believe the name of the organization is. It's kind of like GoFundMe, but it's basically a GoFundMe competitor. So basically, Liz was raising money. Andre was pushing the campaign, trying to help raise money for it. But somehow he got access to the account and at some point changed the banking information to his own over from Tired Peasants banking info. And so from very early on, he was basically siphoning off money from the spot fund campaign and going into his own pockets. So, yeah, this all came out last month. And ever since, Andre has been putting on the weeping game, threatening to do the old sewer slide and saying he's going to pay Liz back, even though he hasn't even tried. So right now, Liz and another woman, Andre ripped off using similar methods. They're trying to recover their money through new fundraisers, and in the meantime, Andre is basically uh, just nowhere to be found. He was posting on Twitter until recently, and then he started posting on TikTok again until people found out and started spreading the word. And who knows what's going on with him? I have to say I'm disappointed. I never saw this coming. I was distracted with my own issues going on in real life with my job situation and also my living situation and everything else. So I honestly didn't see this coming. Uh, I have to say I'm disappointed in Andre. I thought he was one of the good ones, but he stole $7,800 from Liz. That's 7,800. That's a felony offense, and considering this took place over multiple states: Florida, Ohio, Georgia. Uh, this could be charged if charges were to be pressed. It could result in federal charges for wire fraud. So if Andre doesn't start paying that money back, uh, he might end up driving Liz and Trina to file a police report, at which point it goes into a database. And if Ohio decides, or whatever jurisdiction the police report is filed, if that jurisdiction decides, okay, we need to extradite this guy because he's obviously not going to pay the money back, he goes into a federal database, which means he could be arrested anywhere. I mean, nothing's set in stone yet. People are still figuring stuff out. But in the meantime, do not trust Andre Morton. If you see him on Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Blue Sky, uh, Red Note or any place else that has a leftist space, block him. Just block him. Do not let him con you the way he con Liz. So yeah, it's sad, but just goes to show you never really know someone until something like this happens. All right, so anyway, let's go ahead and get to our first story. So obviously, Caligula Drumpf is in the 8th month now, going into the 9th month of his regime, and he's smashing the Constitution left and right, wrapping up deportations, trying to catch up to Joe Biden, who outpaced him on deportations from his first term, and basically, instead of even properly deputizing people or hiring people for immigration and customs enforcement, he's basically just got unidentified masked armed goons going around kidnapping people off the streets and disappearing them to concentration camps in Florida and God knows where else. Ecuador is one of the locations. But recently, in the wake of dead Nazi Charlie Kirk, assuming room temperature after going to a Nazi rally in Utah, extolling the virtues of guns and accusing Democrat-run towns and Democrat-run states of being cesspools of violent crime, full of black people committing rape, murder, and God only knows what else. Well, he got murdered by a white Groyper. Groyper being a subsection of MAGA who thinks Trump and people like Kirk and Alex Jonestown and Tucker Carlson and all the rest aren't fascist enough. So, and of course, they're trying to blame the left for all of this. And Drumpf just went ahead and signed an executive order, which I will show to you in just a second. Yeah, designating Antifa as a domestic terror organization. Now, I'm going to explain to you why this is a bad idea in just a second. But this is just complete and utter bullshit. But let me go ahead and read it to you. It says, Section 1, Antifa is a terrorist threat. Antifa is a militarist anarchist enterprise that explicitly calls for the overthrow of the United States government, law enforcement authorities, and our system of law. It uses illegal means to organize and execute a campaign of violence and terrorism nationwide. To accomplish these goals, this campaign involves coordinated efforts to obstruct enforcement of federal laws through armed standoffs with law enforcement, organized riots, violent assaults on immigration and customs enforcement and other law enforcement officers, and routine doxing of and other threats against political figures and activists. Antifa recruits, trains, and radicalizes young Americans to engage in this violence and suppression of political activity, then employs elaborate means and mechanisms to shield the identities of its operatives, conceal its funding sources and operations in an effort to frustrate law enforcement and recruit additional members. Individuals associated with and acting on behalf of Antifa further coordinate with other organizations and entities for the purpose of spreading, fomenting, and advancing political violence and suppressing lawful political speech. This organized effort designed to achieve policy objectives by coercion and intimidation is domestic terrorism. And then, of course, he goes through a whole bunch of other bullshit. Now, the obvious problem with all this is that it's complete bullshit. You simply cannot call Antifa an organization because there is no Antifa organization. Antifa is an ideology. It's an abbreviation of anti-fascist. Basically, it just means that you're against Nazis. That's literally all it is. You're against Nazis and other forms of fascism. There is no organized group. There's no leadership structure, no finance structure. Nobody's backing Antifa financially. It's just people who are against fascism, okay? Do you have a grandparent or a great-grandparent who fought in World War II against Nazi Germany? Your grandparent was anti-fascist. If you have a grandparent or great-grandparent who fought against Japan in World War II, your grandparent or great-grandparent was anti-fascist. Or fought in Italy, anti-fascist. That's all Antifa really is. It's just you being anti-fascist, against fascism and Nazis. So what this idiocy here is saying, and let me go ahead and show you again. What he's saying basically is that anyone who is a leftist or anyone who is opposed to fascism is now labeled as a domestic terrorist. So let's go ahead and read section 2. Designation as a domestic terrorist organization. Because of the aforementioned pattern of political violence designed to suppress lawful political activity and obstruct the rule of law, I hereby designate Antifa as a domestic terrorist organization. All relevant executive departments and agencies shall utilize all applicable authorities to investigate, disrupt, and dismantle any and all illegal operations, especially those involving terrorist actions conducted by Antifa or any person claiming to act on behalf of Antifa, or for which Antifa or any person claiming to act on behalf of Antifa provided material support, including necessary investigatory and prosecutorial actions against those who fund such operations. Section 3, general provisions. A, the order shall be implemented consistent with applicable law. This order is not intended to and does not create any right or benefit, substantive or procedural, enforceable law at law or in equity by any party against the United States, its departments, agencies, or entities, its officers, employees, or agents, or any other person. So basically, Drumpf has just declared war on the left, on anyone who is not a fascist. This is the United States government openly declaring itself to be a fascist government. So Politico goes ahead and reports on this. This is from about 3 days ago, 9/22. Caligula Drumpf signed an executive order Monday, designated anti-fascists as a domestic terrorist organization, formalizing his threatened attacks on political rivals and paving the way for a government crackdown on left-wing opponents. A new order would require his regime to investigate, disrupt, and dismantle individuals and groups associating themselves with the anti-fascist ideology, including against those who fund such operations. The order does not spell out what steps the government would take against the leaderless movement. Federal law enforcement has previously characterized Antifa as an ideology rather than a unified organization, and the regime has not singled out specific individuals or groups it would target. So basically, because it is so broad, it can be applied to literally anyone who attempts to protest ICE arrests, anyone who protests war, anyone who speaks out against government overreaching, abuses of power, violations of the Constitution, gets labeled a terrorist and prosecuted as such. So it's very broad and vague, so it can be applied to anyone. Labeling a U.S.-based entity as a terrorist organization also marks an unprecedented step, since all of the 219 organizations with that State Department designation are foreign. The announcement drew criticism from Representative Benny Thompson, the ranking member of the Homeland Security Committee. In a statement, the Mississippi Democrat called the order an unprecedented action that ignores a larger threat from right-wing extremism. And it's true. Right-wing extremists are the single biggest domestic terror threat in the United States and have been for decades. Some would say well over a century and a half, because if you go back to after the Civil War with the formation of the Ku Klux Klan, that was a domestic fascist terrorist organization before fascism was formally identified and developed. It had its start in outright racist organizations like the Ku Klux Klan that were formed specifically to terrorize Black people to keep them in their place after the end of slavery. And of course, many members of the KKK were judges, cops, politicians, community leaders, people who were embarrassed to be open about their racism in the wake of the Civil War. They were very often the leaders and organizers and funders, and their wives often organized lynch parties where they're the ones bringing the food and other items to lynchings, brought the kids, made it a family affair. So this is a kind of political, lawful political organizing that Drumpf is seeking to protect. Actual literal lynchings. So let's go ahead and close this out. That's from Ground News, labeling Politico. Labeling a U.S. entity, marks an unprecedented step. So designating Antifa, which has no defined organizational structure or leadership, as domestic terrorism organization is not only incorrect, it serves no purpose other than an excuse for the Drumpf regime to stifle dissent, investigate anyone or any group it doesn't like, punish its enemies, and potentially label any American it wants as a terrorist, Thompson said. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt had previewed the order earlier, noting that Drumpf promised to designate Antifa as a terrorist organization ahead of last year's dictatorial election. Now, keep in mind that the Biden and Harris regime laid the groundwork for this by criminalizing dissent against the genocide in Gaza, which is ongoing, and I'll get to that later on in this hour. But Drumpf's rhetoric targeting political opponents has increased following the killing of Charlie Kirk in Utah earlier this month in what Utah law enforcement officials labeled a politically motivated attack. Drumpf said in a social media post last week he intended to label Antifa a domestic terrorist organization, calling it a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster. Antifa, shorthand for anti-fascists, is an umbrella description for it's not far left. There's no such thing as a far left in the United States or in the West generally. It's just regular people who are rightly against Nazis. So it's just an umbrella description for people who resist neo-Nazis and white supremacists at demonstrations and other events, okay? I remember in 1999, the Ku Klux Klan staged a demonstration in my hometown where there were more protesters against the KKK than there were actual people coming up to support the KKK. But, under the terms that Drumpf is setting, the people who protested the Klan would have been labeled a domestic terror organization, or as a Klan, an actual domestic terror organization, would have been considered law-abiding. So, So Drumpf's attacks on political opponents were a feature of his remarks Sunday at dead Nazi Charlie Kirk's political rally, where he blamed rising tensions in the wake of the activist's death on the radical left. If speech is violence, then some are bound to conclude that violence is justified to stop speech, and we're not going to let that be justified, Drumpf told the audience in Arizona. The order comes as Drumpf regime officials have sought to crush negative comments about Charlie Kirk following his long overdue death. Federal Communications Commission Chair Brendan Carr pressured Disney into suspending Jimmy Kimmel Live after the host made comments about Kirk on his show. Disney lifted the suspension on Monday. So let's go ahead and get to the next part here, because I want to keep this live stream to an hour or under. So this is from 2 days ago on the 23rd of September. This is for ACLED. And this is a Q&A. Antifa is not a single group, so what is it? Caligula Drumpf has labeled Antifa a terrorist group in the wake of Charlie Kirk's assassination, though Antifa is an ideology, not an organization. This is written by Kieran Doyle, North American Research Manager. On 22nd September, Caligula Drumpf signed an executive order designating Antifa as a domestic terror organization, characterizing the movement as a militarist anarchist enterprise, yada, yada. So what does Antifa mean? It's short for anti-fascist or anti-fascism, and at its most basic is understood as simply that, opposition to fascism. Many who oppose the rise of fascism in pre-World War II Europe use this terminology to signal opposition to fascist leaders. Likewise, today, many who label Trump or other leaders as fascists may, as a way to show their opposition, identify as anti-fascists. Just as there is no broad anti-fascist organization, there isn't necessarily a specific shared ideology among those who label themselves anti-fascists. While many associate the Antifa label with socialists, communists, or anarchists, not all who use the term identify with any of these ideologies. Likewise, while some anti-fascists subscribe to more radical militant activities, the label has grown increasingly mainstream over the past decade and therefore cuts across a wider range of ideologies. So some smaller groups, usually specific to a particular city, label themselves as Antifa or anti-fascists. For instance, the group Rose City Antifa has been active in Portland, Oregon since the early 2000s. More frequently, anti-fascist organizations or anti-fascists organize as a loose collective of individuals without formal leadership or membership, or participate in demonstrations, mutual aid, or more militant activities purely as individuals. ACLED reported on these forms of organizing during the 2020 election cycle. So who are Antifa? Well, contrary to what some might imagine, it's important to emphasize that there's no singular group in the United States or Europe named Antifa, nor is there a national Antifa group with a network of chapters. Indeed, the Antifa label is used to refer to massively different things by people at opposite ends of the political spectrum. Former FBI Director Christopher Wray once described the notion of Antifa as an ideology, not an organization. Anti-fascists sometimes use recognizable iconography, perhaps most famously black and red flags flown together. Anti-fascist symbols are often visible across a wide variety of demonstrations for progressive causes. The presence of anti-fascist symbols at a demonstration does not mean the whole demonstration or associated movement can be labeled as anti-fascist. Some have associated black blocs, groups of demonstrators dressing in all black in an effort to conceal individuals' identities, with Antifa. Though many anti-fascists employ black bloc tactics at demonstrations, this strategy is neither specific nor exclusive to anti-fascists. So I'll go ahead and post this in chat. But really, this is just labeling anyone who is opposed to fascism as a fascist. And because the description of Antifa is so broad, there really is no way that you can apply this to in any narrow fashion. That this is designed quite deliberately to be as broad as possible so that any critic of the regime and its savage subhuman policies can be labeled as anti-fascist and therefore a terrorist. So let's go ahead and get to our next article, which again I'm going to link to just a quick minute. And this is from Alice Johnson, IBA multimedia journalist, Wednesday, May 14th, 2025. So this goes back several months, but this is in keeping with Drumpf's broader attacks on the First Amendment, which again were stepped up under Biden, which was in turn stepped up under Trump's first term, stepped up under Obama, under Bush Jr., and so on, basically really since the Nixon era. So the Drumpf regime has executed a wide-ranging crackdown on freedom of speech by targeting student protesters, lawyers, and the press. Global Insight assesses a threat to the rule of law and what's being done to protect it. So this goes into details on events from March, like say Columbia University graduate Mahmoud Khalil was returning home from dinner with his 8-month pregnant wife when he was arrested and forced into an unmarked car by 4 agents from U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Khalil, a legal resident in the United States, had been a leader of the pro-Palestine protests on Columbia's campus last spring. He's being held in a prison facility in Louisiana. Well, that was back in May, although he was being held elsewhere. Yeah, let's get ground news out of here. And here on CNN. This is from a couple of days ago. As the Drumpf regime faces backlash over officials' decisions to have already left a lengthy trail of rulings lambasting the government for trampling over the First Amendment rights of elite law firms, news organizations, unions, and others. The rulings underscore how judges have pushed back this year on Caligula Drumpf's efforts to test the durability of the First Amendment as he seeks to expand executive power in his second term. They could serve as a warning as officials open a new front in their First Amendment stress test in the wake of the assassination of Nazi activist Charlie Kirk. But even as courts side with some Trump foes in court, experts warn that the dictator's playbook may be more about intimidating Americans and companies than pushing winning legal theories. Well, I think he's trying to do both, actually. So let me just go ahead and stop sharing real quick so I can post a link. So yeah, the latest judicial broadside came earlier this month when a federal judge in Boston sided with Harvard University in its efforts to restore more than $2 billion in federal research funding that was frozen by the White House earlier this year. That ruling from Judge Allison Burroughs was a stinging rebuke of the regime's attempt to unleash the funds so long as the school allowed the government to meddle in its affairs. Burroughs, an appointee of former dictator Barack Obama, who bombed so many Muslim countries, the U.S. actually ran out of bombs, rejected claims by the government that it was targeting the university because it allowed anti-Semitism to run rampant on its campus. The government-initiated onslaught against Harvard was much more about promoting a governmental orthodoxy in violation of the First Amendment than about anything else, including fighting anti-Semitism, Burroughs wrote in an 84-page opinion. And just getting the last drop of iced tea, because I don't like to waste stuff. So judges appointed by Republican dictators, including Drumpf, have also ruled against the dictator in high-stakes First Amendment disputes. In terms of their First Amendment record in the lower courts, it's abysmal, said Timothy Zick, a professor at William and Mary Law School, who specializes in First Amendment law. There are very few lower court wins for the regime. Some of the more notable examples, Zick said, have come in immigration detention cases where judges have ordered officials to release individuals the government is seeking to deport because their political views are at odds with the current regime. In one such case concerning Tufts University PhD student, and I'm going to butcher this, unfortunately, I do apologize for that, but I only speak two languages right now, English and bad English. So Rumeza Ozturk, I hope I said that right. Probably not, but I do apologize. A judge said that officials had provided no evidence to support keeping her detained while she challenged her deportation. Her continued detention potentially chills the speech of millions, U.S. District Judge William K. Sessions III said in May. When Drumpf tried to punish the Associated Press earlier this year after the outlet announced it would not follow his lead in referring to the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America, because it's still the Gulf of Mexico, it's not the Gulf of America, a judge appointed to the bench by Drumpf during his first term made clear that such government retaliation crossed the First Amendment's red line. Judge Trevor McFadden said that the AP had shown that the regime's decision to limit its access to his events, the Oval Office, and Air Force One represented impermissible government retaliation for the outlet's exercise of its First Amendment freedoms. Under the First Amendment, if the government opens its doors to some journalists, be it to the Oval Office, the East Room, or elsewhere, it cannot then shut those doors to other journalists because of their viewpoints, he wrote. The Constitution requires no less. So, again, you can go ahead and read this. I'll post these in the comments section. And you can go ahead and read for yourself. And of course, yeah, so let's go ahead and get to our next story, because I want to move right along. And this is worthy of the clown show moment. So let me go ahead and start off our clown show. Yeah, so Jimmy Kimmel breaks silence on social media ahead of his show's return because Jimmy Kimmel was basically pointing out rightly that Charlie Kirk's shooter is a right-wing extremist, a Utah Mormon, deeply conservative family, cops, military, lots of guns. Drumpf went ahead and bullied ABC into suspending Kimmel, only for the decision to be reversed just a day or two later after Disney shares plunged by several $billion. Yeah, so let's go ahead and read this. Jimmy Kimmel is ending his social media silence as a late-night host prepares to return to the air Tuesday night, where, of course, he had on fascist Jake Tapper to talk about First Amendment, despite criticizing people exercising their First Amendment rights to protest the genocide in Gaza. But yeah, so he posted on Instagram September 23rd for the first time since his show was suspended following controversial comments he made about extreme right-wing commentator Charlie Kirk's killing. Kimmel shared a photo of himself with legendary television writer Norman Lear, along with the caption, "Missing this guy today." Lear died in 2023 at the age of 101. The creator of classic sitcoms like All in the Family and The Jeffersons was outspoken about his liberal political beliefs during his life. In the 1970s, he fought the Federal Communications Commission in protest of a policy that TV programming before 9 p.m. should be family-friendly. Lear and others argued the policy was a violation of the First Amendment. In 1981, Lear founded the progressive advocacy organization People for the American Way to counter the divisive rhetoric and authoritarian agenda by being spread by leaders of the emerging religious right political movement, according to the group. In a 2016 speech at the International Documentary Association Awards, Lear stressed the importance of the First Amendment. Caligula Drumpf does not seem to understand, much less cherish, the Constitution, Lear said at the time, according to the Hollywood Reporter, adding that if Drumpf in any way threatens free speech, it's important to hunker down together and fight. Prior to Kimmel's post about Lear, his Instagram had been inactive since September 15th, the same day he said on his show that the MAGA gang was desperately trying to characterize Tyler Robinson, the suspect charged with killing fascist activist Charlie Kirk, as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it. After facing pressure from the FCC, ABC suspended Kimmel's show on September 17th. Now, ABC Network is owned by Disney. The suspension was widely condemned throughout the entertainment industry, with many arguing it was an example of government censorship and a move against the First Amendment rights we're so vocal about. Jimmy Kimmel and Norman Lear worked together on this. So I'll go ahead and close this out. But let's go ahead and go to The Guardian, which is normally very right-wing establishment rag. But Disney investors demand details into company's Jimmy Kimmel suspension. Shareholders want ABC owner to turn over documents related to decision to temporarily suspend the late-night show. A group of Disney investors asking the company to turn over documents related to the company's decision to temporarily suspend Jimmy Kimmel's late-night show, amid charges the media company may have been complicit in succumbing to media censorship. The investors, composed of lawyers for the American Federation of Teachers and Reporters Without Borders, noted that Disney's stock suffered significant declines in response to the company's abrupt decision to suspend Mr. Kimmel and his show, it said in a letter to Disney. The fallout from suspending Jimmy Kimmel Live sparked criticism as an attack on free speech, triggered boycotts and union support for Mr. Kimmel, and caused Disney's stock to plummet amid fears of brand damage and concerns that Disney was complicit in succumbing to the government overreach and media censorship, the letter said. Lawyers are demanding copies of any meeting minutes, meeting agenda, and written materials provided to the company's board or presented at any meeting of the board regarding Kimmel's decision. It cites a law in Delaware where Disney is incorporated that says shareholders can receive materials around board discussion to investigate potential wrongdoing, mismanagement, and breach of fiduciary duty by members of the board. Disney did not immediately respond to requests for comments. Gee, I can't imagine why. But yeah, so that was our clown show for the night. And I'll go ahead and paste this again into the chat because why not? Because I do want everyone to see what's going on here. So yeah, this is what we've got going on. Caligula Drumpf is attacking free speech, obviously, as he's always done. But honestly, you know, that this is really just continuing and ramping up the suppression of free speech begun under previous regimes. You know, it became much more evident during the Bush-Cheney regime during the 2000s, you know, especially in the wake of the illegal invasion and occupation of Iraq and the destruction of that country. And then, of course, Barry Obama, once he got in, continued crackdowns on free speech. He famously deployed National Guard units to suppress Black Lives Matter protests, which became violent when counter-protesters and undercover cops instigated violence. So, you know, this is just really this is just really an extension of all that. And here's the acleddata.com link. And you can read all these in your leisure. But yeah, this is not surprising. We all knew this was coming. As the order breaks down, as we descend even further into fascism and open totalitarianism, the final vestiges that we were anything but a fascist country are being systematically crushed. And it's only going to get worse over the next 3 years. So, yeah, I don't know what to say, people. Things are going to get bad. They're going to get bad. The Democrats twice inflicted Caligula Drumpf on us, running the worst possible candidate imaginable, preferring to lose to him rather than allow anyone even remotely liberal to take over the party. It really is just fucking stupid. So let's go ahead and get to our next story because I want to get things moving. So the Gaza flotilla, global Sumud flotilla, braces for escalating dangers as it approaches Gaza amid drone attacks and Israeli threats. So this is from AlJazeera.com. There are other sources. But basically, Israel has been threatening to imprison Greta Thunberg, who is aboard one of the flotilla ships, indefinitely if she enters back into Gaza. And the number of ships actually is growing. As far as I'm aware, there's something like 14 or 15 ships sailing towards Gaza. Various sizes, but you know they're all trying to deliver food, medicine, and other supplies to try and alleviate the suffering by people in Gaza who are being systematically starved to death by Israel. So this is posted today. Mauricio Morales at AlJazeera.com. On board the Alma Greek territorial waters, the activists of Global Sumud Flotilla remain alert. Wednesday's drone attack on the vessels heading towards Gaza to break Israel's siege on the Palestinian enclave is not expected to be the last. As a flotilla currently traveling in Greek territorial waters near Gaza, a larger Israeli attack is expected. What happened was yet another war crime committed against civilians against a humanitarian mission, said Yasmin Akar, 38-year-old German-Turkish member of the global Sumud Florida Flotilla's steering committee. Akar is experienced in spotting drones and assessing security risks, having previous experience trying to reach Gaza on June's Madlin flotilla, which Israel intercepted. The crew, including Akar, were detained and then deported by Israel. The flotilla had already been on high alert before Wednesday's attack. Israel had issued repeated threats, and flotilla vessels had been attacked while at port in Tunisia earlier in September. That meant that when Akar saw the reflections of 3 unidentified objects in the orange sky of sunset on Tuesday, she immediately told volunteers aboard the flotilla to be extra aware once darkness set in. Drones were seen approaching the Alma, one of the vessels in the flotilla, at about 8 p.m. on Tuesday. That's 8 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, 1700 or 5 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time on Tuesday. From then on, the activists on watch duty reported an increase in drones flying over the ship, with 15 counted in total throughout the night. By 11 p.m. or 8 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, problems with radio and internet communications were reported, marking the prelude to the attack. The decision was made to wake all the volunteers, put on life vests, and gather at the designated meeting point on the ship for further instructions. In the distance, the lights of the sailboats of the flotilla swayed from side to side, visible from the Alma. Bursts of light and the sound of explosions above the sailboats were seen and heard by the volunteers. More explosions followed, and broken communications reported the possible use of chemicals as drones continued flying at low altitude and attacked the sailboats. 13 explosions were reported in total throughout the night, according to a news statement from the Global Sumud Flotilla. So, everyone was in good spirits by dawn on Wednesday, but things are only likely to get more dangerous from here. Israel threatened the flotilla again on Thursday. Israel will not allow any vessels to enter the active combat zone, said Israel Foreign Ministry official Eden Bartal, who added that the flotilla was provocative and serving Hamas, an accusation the flotilla activists reject, and of course, which is completely untrue. The flotilla has received a welcome boost, however, which I'll get to in a minute, with Spain and Italy sending Navy ships to protect it as it gets closer to Gaza. So, like I said, I'll post this in the chat before we go ahead and get to the next story, because this is this is unprecedented, ladies and gentlemen. Italy and then Spain have dispatched naval vessels to help protect or perhaps monitor the flotilla, although there is some speculation as to Italy's intentions. But this is according to Reuters. Italy and Spain deploy naval vessels to protect the flotilla on course for Gaza. Rome, September 25th, Reuters, Italy and Spain have deployed naval ships to assist an international aid flotilla that has come under drone attack while trying to deliver aid to Gaza, potentially ratcheting up tensions with Israel, which strongly opposes the initiative. The global Sumud flotilla is using about 50 civilian boats. Wow, 50. I thought there was 15, but 50. That's 50. Well, let me go ahead and highlight that for you. 50 civilian boats. 5 times 10, 50. That explains why this is such a thing, because you've got this many ships trying to deliver food, medicine, and clean drinking water and other supplies. Baby formula, so starving infants can eat. 50 ships trying to break the starvation. No wonder they had to send a couple of ships, because when you've got that many, Israel will, of course, have no qualms whatsoever using drones, warplanes, and even military vessels to intercept and destroy the ships. Because when you've got that many, you can't possibly prevent all of them from getting through. So the only possible response, if you're going to try and prevent any one of them from getting through, is to launch a full-scale military assault. So the Italian and Spanish warships are there basically, if you hit one of our ships, NATO countries would have to evoke Article 5 under NATO conventions. So whether or not they actually will is a whole different matter altogether. But just the possibility that NATO might be compelled to intervene to respond to an attack on member states' naval vessels. Yeah. Wow, 50 boats. The global Sumud flotilla is using about 50 civilian boats to try and break Israel's naval blockade of Gaza. Many lawyers, parliamentarians, and activists, including Swedish climate campaigner Greta Thunberg, are on board. The Italian Defense Ministry said a frigate that was dispatched on Wednesday, hours after the GSF was targeted on its way to Gaza, would be replaced by another vessel, adding that the aim was to protect people. It's not an act of war. It's not a provocation. It's an act of humanity, which is a duty of a state toward its citizens, Defense Minister Guido Crosetto told the upper house of parliament on the decision to send a ship. So basically, this is unprecedented because Italy has been a staunch supporter of Israel up until now. But the formal declaration that a genocide is by the United Nations and International Criminal Court, that Israel is indeed committing a genocide, that all the legal requirements have been met to label it a genocide and a crime against humanity have been met. People in Italy have been going on strike the last several days. They've shut down the docks to prevent aid from going to Israel to carry out its campaign of slaughter. But this is something that is unprecedented. And plus, of course, on board the flotilla boats are European politicians, French political figures, people from Spain, Italy. So there are actual government officials on board those boats. And if Israel takes them out, the people of Spain and Italy and yes, France would be up in arms saying, hey, why are you letting Israel massacre our citizens? Why aren't you doing anything to protect them? So this is something that comes across to me as Italy and Spain playing cover your ass. Because if their citizens get killed trying to deliver food to starving people at a time when opposition to Israel's genocide of Palestinians is at an all-time high, yeah. Let it not be said that Europeans have forgotten how to rebel. Considering what Italians did to Mussolini at the end of World War II, when it became clear that they weren't content to let him drag them down with them. Meloni probably was feeling very nervous. Meloni herself is very fascistic in her ideology, but she's also a European politician, which means she is very sensitive to the reality that her people are not so easily put down as we here in the United States are. So flotilla rejects Cyprus aid compromise. The Italian Foreign Ministry said Belgium, France, and other European nations had asked them to help provide assistance to their citizens on the flotilla if needed. Italy had proposed a compromise whereby aid supplies could be dropped off in Cyprus and handed over to the Catholic Church's Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem, which would then distribute them in Gaza. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said Israel backed the idea. However, the Italian delegation rejected that suggestion on behalf of the flotilla on Thursday. Our mission stays true to its original goal of breaking Israel's illegal siege and delivering humanitarian aid to the besieged population of Gaza. Because basically, if that aid goes to Cyprus, it's going to disappear. It's not going to get to Gaza. Everyone knows that. So, so the mission stays true. The Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem said it would not comment on reports if it was in discussions about the flotilla. Italy sent the first frigate on Wednesday, hours after the flotilla said it was targeted by drones that dropped stun grenades and itching powder on the vessels as they sailed in international waters 30 nautical miles off the Greek island of Gatos. No one was hurt, but some damage was caused to the vessels. Spain also said it was sending a warship on Thursday to assist the flotilla, joining Italy in an unprecedented move by European governments. Previous activist attempts to break the naval blockade on Gaza were stopped by force of the Israeli military. This is, again, unprecedented. This is a situation where people's actual lives are in danger. Politicians' lives are in danger. Israel is basically declaring that it's hell-bent on starving Palestinians to death, extermination of the entire population, and that it will not allow any food or water or medicine or any other aid to come into Gaza. And it can easily prevent one boat from getting in, maybe 2 or 3, but 50? One of those boats would be getting through, and then at least maybe more than one, at a time when Israel is preparing to launch another attack on Iran, possibly this weekend, which I'll get to shortly. But I just posted another link to Al Jazeera explaining the reasons for the deployment, which are a little bit more detailed. So why have Spain and Italy sent ships to assist the Gaza Sumud flotilla? It's a sign of increased pro-Palestinian sentiment in Europe. So Italy and Spain have decided yada yada. So Israel is widely believed to be behind the attacks on the flotilla. However, in keeping with many of its suspected overseas operations, the government has not commented. Israeli rhetoric against the flotilla, however, has escalated. Early in the voyage, National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir called the activists on board terrorists and said they should be treated as such. More recently, the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which has repeatedly urged the flotilla to unload its cargo in Israeli territory, described the effort to deliver aid as a jihadist initiative. So how much danger is the flotilla in, and will the Spanish and Italian naval ships make any difference? Here's what we know. How much risk is there to the flotilla? The global Sumud flotilla has said it expects an imminent Israeli attack now that it is nearing Gaza. Israel itself has said it will not allow any vessel to enter the active combat zone and breach its naval blockade of Gaza. 3 previous attempts to similarly deliver aid to Gaza this year have been intercepted by Israeli forces. In May, the Conscience was attacked and forced to return to port in Malta after being targeted by drones. An attempt in June was also blocked by Israel when the Madeleine was intercepted in international waters and its crew imprisoned. A third attempt in July by the Handala was intercepted by Israeli forces. That's the one that Amazon union leader Christian Smalls was on board, and he got physically assaulted when he was arrested. So that was intercepted by Israeli forces in international waters, and its crew again detained. So what have the Italian and Spanish governments said? Speaking outside the United Nations General Assembly in New York on Wednesday, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez, who has been among Israel's most prominent critics, told reporters the government of Spain demands that international law be complied with and that the right of its citizens to navigate the Mediterranean under safe conditions be respected. The position of Italy and its right-wing government, which has often backed Israel, is less clear, despite the presence of a number of Italian citizens, including parliamentarians on board the flotilla. Italy's military support for the mission appears conditional. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni described the flotilla's mission as gratuitous, dangerous, and irresponsible, and speaking outside the UN on Wednesday, urged the flotilla to hand over its aid in Cyprus to the Latin Patriarchate of Jerusalem, which would then keep it and not distribute it at all to Gaza, because there's no way Israel would allow it. That was rejected by the flotilla, but Italian Defense Minister Guido Crosetto on Wednesday said sending the Navy ship was an act of humanity. It is not an act of war. It is not a provocation. It is an act of humanity, which is a duty of the state towards its citizens. So how popular is support for Palestine in Spain and Italy? Now, gets to the nitty-gritty of why these ships are being sent. Both Spain and Italy have large pro-Palestinian movements that have been galvanized by Israel's genocide in Gaza. Mass protests and port blockades were held in Italy over the weekend, highlighting mass support for the Palestinian cause in the country, even as the Italian government refuses to follow many of its European neighbors in recognizing Palestinian statehood. In Spain, support on the streets for Palestine has translated into official government support, with Sanchez becoming one of the most vocal world leaders in criticizing Israel. The prime minister has approved a full arms embargo on Israel and has called for Israel to not be allowed to compete in international sport. So, this is the shit hitting the fan, people. This is the shit hitting the fan. And since we are running short on time, I want to get to our next story, because this is rather disturbing. And it suggests that something big may be in the works. So Nazi Pete Hegseth abruptly summons top military commanders to a meeting in Virginia next week. And I do mean all of them. Washington, Associated Press. War Secretary Pete Hegseth has summoned the military's top officers, hundreds of generals and admirals, to a base in Northern Virginia for a sudden meeting next week, according to 3 people familiar with the matter. The directive did not offer a reason for the gathering next Tuesday of senior commanders of the 1-star rank or higher and their top advisors at the Marine Corps base in Quantico. The people, who described the move as unusual, were not authorized to publicly discuss the sensitive plans and spoke Thursday on condition of anonymity. The Pentagon's top spokesboy, Sean Parnell, confirmed that Hegseth will be addressing his senior military leaders early next week. Across the military, there are 800 generals and admirals of all ranks. Many command thousands of service members and are stationed across the world in more than a dozen countries and time zones. Well over 700 military bases around the world. Dictator Caligula Drumpf didn't seem to know about the meeting when he was asked about it by reporters during an Oval Office appearance later Thursday. "I'll be there if they want me, but why is that such a big deal?" Drumpf said. So let me get this straight, because I was not aware of this. Hegseth calls in literally all of the top military brass, 800 officers, 1-star up, to a meeting in Virginia early next week with no explanation. And Drumpf pretends like he's only hear about this for the first time. This is fucking insane. Oh my God. Vice Dictator Couchfucker Vance argued that the media had turned it into a big story and that it was not particularly unusual that generals who report to Hegseth are coming to speak with them. The meeting, first reported by the Washington Post, comes on the heels of several unusual and unexplained actions that Hegseth has taken involving military leaders. In May, Hegseth ordered that the military cut 20% of its 4-star general officers, directed an additional 10% cut from all general and flag officers across the force, and told the National Guard to shed 20% of its top positions. In February, Hegseth fired Admiral Lisa Franchetti, the Navy's top officer, and General James Slife, the Air Force's second highest officer, without explanation. He also relieved the military's top lawyers. Since then, Hegseth has fired other military leaders without saying why. Most recently, it was a general who led a military intelligence agency's whose initial assessment of U.S. damage to Iranian nuclear sites in American strikes angered Caligula Drumpf. So basically, it looks like they might be doing another purge. And here's another article about why the Gaza flotilla is in serious danger. So let me go ahead and post that there. But the reason that this is disturbing has to do with a post by Elon Mizrahi earlier today. He said, "Everything I'm seeing and sensing tells me Israel is going to attack Iran again this weekend. The aim this time will be maximum economic damage, destruction of infrastructure, and Ayatollah Khamenei. They're going to do it while Netanyahu is in New York, and the urgent military meeting in America is a deception to make the world expect something that would supposedly come later, when in fact it's already happening." I would have to concur. My instinct also tells me that they're planning another attack on Iran very soon. This is my response. That makes sense. Nazi Yahoo wants to be as far away as possible from Israel when Iran launches its retaliatory strikes. If Tel Aviv restarts hostilities, my gut tells me Tehran won't stop until Israel is neutralized militarily. This is definitely possible. The strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities apparently failed to get the job done. It seems Iran had plenty of time in advance to prepare and moved its nuclear materials and other technology that could be moved to safer locations off-site. So do we actually know now where the nuclear material is? No, especially since Iran has decided that the International Atomic Energy Agency is more inclined to continue passing info on Iran's nuclear capabilities to Israel than actually do its job. So, this is something that is just disturbing, because on top of the imminent attack on the Gaza aid flotilla, which we all know is coming, Israel's trying once again to initiate war to destroy Iran. Now, Iran would be stupid not to be developing a nuclear weapon. I don't know why Ayatollah Khamenei keeps insisting that they're not going to develop one. They need to develop one, okay? Because Israel is just insane enough to try and do this, and I don't think that they're going to stop until they are stopped. And Iran, for its own survival, must get the nuclear deterrent. Because if you think Israel won't implement the Samson option, which, if you're familiar with the Old Testament, Samson was a biblical figure who was a champion, loosely modeled on the Epic of Gilgamesh. But then he was captured by his enemies, rendered powerless until the very end, where he repented after supposedly losing his powers, and then was granted them back, which he then used to destroy the temple along with his enemies and himself. And so the Samson option might be that Israel launches all of its nukes at its surrounding neighbors, including Iran, Iraq, Syria, or at least the parts not already under Israeli control, Turkey. Because if Israel thinks it's going down, it's going to take the rest of the Middle East with it. So I wouldn't put it past them to do that. But if they decide that they're going to try and attack Iran again, they would be stupid to do that, because the 12-day war in June should have taught Israel that it has no way to defend against Iranian retaliatory strikes. None. Zero. Zilch. Zilch. Zip. Nada. The so-called Iron Dome is a paper dome. And Iran didn't even use its full arsenal, or even its newer equipment. So if Israel decides to start another war, Iran is going to have to commit to completely neutralizing Israel militarily so that it cannot ever launch another attack. And if it does do that, count on Israel to continue trying to step up the genocide in Gaza and the West Bank. Because if it can't have the land, then it reasons no one will. It would rather go down than not commit genocide. That's the kind of psychopaths we're dealing with, the kind of subhuman savages we are dealing with. Because fascists are not human beings, all right? They just are not, okay? They lack empathy. They lack any real human emotion. They lack all the qualities in a human being that are required to prevent one from going out of the way to engage in harm against others. All right? They're literally the type of person who would, they're serial killers, is what they are. Or they have the mentality of serial killers. All right. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all I've got for this evening for the Thursday night edition of The Left Independent. Please do all the YouTube things, like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification so that you never miss a video. Until next time, this is Mike, The Left Independent, saying good night and good luck.